the day the Great Western went public, these decades ago, was the day that Mrs. Thatcher privatized Jaguar. And as the story and legend, the truth was that they assumed that all the corporate money, pension funds, etc., would go into the privatization of Jaguar. But coincidentally, that's the day that I wanted to go public, August 10th, my birthday. So everybody advised me against it. I mean, when I mean everybody, 100% consensus. Now, when there's 100% consensus, you know it's wrong. Everybody, from the Bank of England down. But I refused to move the date. And that privatization of Jaguar was relatively inexpensive looking back in hindsight. And so, but they privatized a lot of assets here, but other countries privatize assets too. But as you well know that...
Great Western, the one that roared.
Great Western was the one that really roared. I was up 20%, Jaguar was down 20%. So one guy, me, with my team, I mean, I couldn't have done it with all the great guys we had on our team, outsold the entire city. So, because most of the guys, in the old days, it wasn't a matter of selling. It was a matter of, I went to Oxford with you, and I went to here with you, and our fathers, came across on not the Mayflower, because that's the other way, but whatever, there's less of that. So it was a really an old boys network. And even though they say that it's not an old boys network anymore, it still is. And that's the beauty of doing business here in Britain, and it's the downside. Because when you're not part of the old boys network, you're not fucked, but I mean, it's harder. And, and not to be disparaging, I don't know of any minorities in the old boys network. Now, it may have changed, but I don't know of any. In those days, I mean, I don't think I ever saw a brown or a black face. In the city is a square mile, which is the financial district of London. It's called the city. And that, in the old days, that was where the Romans built the wall for the original London, when the Romans built it. And I don't remember, other than servants and butlers and shit like that. And if you go down to the city now, there are minorities, but not representative of the percentages of the population, I don't believe. I may be speaking out of school, but there's plenty of Asian in the city now. Asian and mostly, I think, I may be wrong about this, Indian. And Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, I think even Jack Welch said, the smartest, and I said this earlier in the seminar, the smartest people on the planet are in southern India. Across the board, not just IT. And when you look at the, although I skipped over the slide a couple of days ago, when you look at the top 100 companies in the world, I don't know, 50, 60% of them are run by Indians, the CEOs. Because they are smarter than shit, I mean, in a positive way, not when I say smarter than shit, I mean, it's, in Texas, that's what you'd say, smarter than shit, but that means they're really bright. But getting back to your question about privatization, there are now counties, municipalities sell off assets all the time, and in America, and they normally sell them probably for the wrong price. Now, on the other side of that, sometimes they hire J.P. Morgan or Goldman Sachs to sell the assets, and then it's an auction process. And 99 times out of 100, if you buy something on auction, you pay too much. 1% of the time, something happens and you get a reasonably good deal. But by definition, and some of the things you're going to look at are going to be auctioned. Just know when to say no next. Because one, auction process takes a long time. Two, even when the auction is done, if the people that are running the auction, they didn't hit the minimum price, whatever the minimum bid is, it'll have to start all over again, and you don't know that until the auction's over with. And then if you're an estate like the Rockefellers just had a big auction where they raised, $1 billion selling off all those things. And I was going to buy a pair of the Rockefellers' famous cufflinks, because he liked martinis and he was supposed to be a great martini mixer. And the bid was, or in the book, in Christie's or Sotheby's book, it was like $600 to $800. I think they sold for $20,000, and because of the Rockefeller name. So I would just stay 100% away from auctions. Now, when the market is going south, and most of you have never lived through a recessionary period where property prices went down dramatically. You don't even know. And I have. I've seen it. Back in the, I think it was early 90s, property prices in Mayfair, London, fell to shit. And they haven't seen that in 25 years. So we've had a whole generation grow up thinking that, God only makes so much land, that old load of crap, and it's going to go up forever. Well, it doesn't go up forever. Eventually, supply meets demand. And what has kept property prices in Britain on the upswing for so long is first, when the wall fell and all the Russians were stealing money out of Russia to come and they bought stuff here. And then when the various other markets, and then the oil oligarchs, etc., wanted to spend money, and in Britain and the United States, i.e. New York, i.e. Chicago, i.e. Los Angeles, they bid up the prices. And so you saw homes, for example, in Beverly Hills that were $3, $4, $5, $6 million houses, now selling, or 2 years ago, selling for $25, $30, $35, $40 million. And but when the markets turn and there's auctions, then quite often you can get a good deal. I've seen oil rigs, not this time when it was at $25 a barrel, but the last time, back in the early 80s, they were selling oil rigs that cost $3 to $5 million. These, the things that they rotate and you drill it either onshore or offshore. And offshore rigs are a lot more expensive. They were selling them by the pound. Scrap metal by the pound. $5 million rigs for $50,000. $15 million rigs for $150,000, because they weigh that much, and that's how many. So, but if you wait long enough, and guys like Buffett that are sitting on a lot of cash, keeping their powder dry, as they used to say, I don't know if they say that anymore, are guys that are in institutions that are able to take advantage of those situations. But you may have to wait 15, 25, 30 years, and most people can't. And you don't have to, because you use the QLA methodology, the model, since you're not using your own money. It's not easy, but it's much easier. Last night, what did you see?
Steve Ballmer.
Okay. And what did you think of Steve?
Enthusiasm.
Energetic. Special. Very theatrical.
And that's the first time I've never heard him use a bad word. And he said he was nervous before he talked because he knew this was going to be on YouTube forever. And so, but he cleaned up. He's a very bright guy, super energetic, super enthusiastic. But he's an alpha male. He's an anomaly to most of the icon guys and gals that we've talked about. He's at my end of the continuum, Trump's end of the continuum, not necessarily politically, but sure in his actions. Just the opposite of the people so far that you've talked about. And again, 98% of the high-performance people, 98% of the people that run these big organizations, 98% of the founders of these, iconic companies are not alpha males. They're not regular Joes, but personality. Many of them are introverts. Many have communication skills they're lacking, which fits the bill for most people, not just this room, but everybody that's sat in this room almost, and certainly a majority of the people that are watching on YouTube. And what else about Steve?
No one will follow you if you don't have passion, optimism, and execution.
His leadership skills are pretty good. I mean, they're extraordinary, not pretty good. They're fucking extraordinary.
He spoke about how he developed his leadership skills by leading the football team, like their management. So he had to get in front of football players who prefer to ignore him, and so he had to get in front of people and command their attention, and that's what helped him build his leadership skills, and then transferred over to Microsoft and everywhere else he went to afterwards.
I expect the basketball team he bought, the Clippers, I believe it was, will in the next 2 or 3 years will have much better results than they had prior. He's an extraordinary guy. He's the leadership model that I would rather you emulate, because you're already introverted, you already lack sales skills, you already, from your, I don't mean you, but I mean everybody. So you're not going to get to that end of the continuum, but the more you can be pulled towards that end of the continuum, the better off you're going to be in fulfilling your own dreams, your own goals, which you wrote about last night, which we're going to talk about today. But there are not that many when, in the 50 years that I've been around that are like Ballmer. And he talked about one-trick ponies and two-trick ponies, and I'll be happy, I'll be satisfied if you just be a one-trick pony. I know once they get a one-trick pony, they want to be a two-trick pony. But, I've been doing this now 25 years. And so it's hard enough to get you to be a one-trick pony, let alone 2, 3-trick ponies. And one-trick pony, you'll have, be able to save the world, for those of you that want to save the world, and do, everything that you ever dreamt of. And as you accumulate wealth, new things pop up, like I told you over the last few days. Then you can justify in your mind, well, 2 planes. I know Dan said 1 plane is pissing money down a rat hole. But, we could have another plane for the wife and the kids. And then you go through all these machinations of horseshit. You can justify just about anything in your mind. And it's even easier to justify, Walter, when you have a shitload of money. I have a shitload of money. Oh, it's only 4% of my net worth, or it's only this, or it's only 1.5% of my cash flow, and then you go and do it. And then often you fall off the rails, and then a lot of the kids get in trouble. Steve is the guy that I have a respect for everybody that we talked about and we've used as examples so far. Otherwise, I wouldn't be showing you. Although I talk about Adolf Hitler, I'm not showing you any films other than that short little clip. But those guys, if any of the attributes, any of the characteristics of any of the people that we talked about and you saw films on are worth mimicking, copying, modeling. And for each one of your own personality, you'll fit in a little differently. But Steve was excited when he was speaking at Oxford that day. And a couple of my mentees were there in the audience. He says there was an energy in the air. Whereas when Stephen Hawking talked just after he did, now I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and he's one of the most brilliant guys that ever was on the earth. He's gone now. He died a few months ago, but there wasn't that energy. He's in a wheelchair. He's talking through that machine, and I'm sure. Although one of my mentees were there also, and there was a lot of people with iPhones taping it, and I'm sure his words of wisdom were just as meaningful, but they don't come across the same way. But you're not Hawking, So at least you haven't shown me those attributes yet. Maybe we have a budding Hawkins here. But unfortunately, the louder, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I told you that, for example, the average bank manager, this is maybe 10 years old information, in a United States bank gets 25,000 phone calls, unsolicited phone calls a year. Not from customers, 25,000 phone calls. And so who are you going to answer? The one that calls back 150 times. That's who you're going to answer. Not the one that leaves a message on their answering service or on their one of the 3 or 4 assistants answering service. And so the same vis-a-vis leadership. I can make you president of your new organization. I can make you managing director. But I can't make them respect you. You have to do that through leadership. Leadership that many of the people that come through here don't exhibit because they haven't been taught. Very few of the schools have classes in leadership. Those of you that have military backgrounds, you understand leadership better than the rest of the group. Remember, 2/3 of the Fortune 500 CEOs, and it's pretty much consistent across the world, have a couple things in common, one of which is military background. Military background. Anything else, Steve? Yes, Pedro.
He said that the most difficult decisions he has to make are all people related.
And boy, that's an understatement. And that's why your cousin, your uncle, you're not by blood, brother-in-law, and all that. When it's time to put a cap in his ass, that means fire him. Because we're not in the other business. You hesitate. And sometimes you won't even do it. Now, I overcompensate for my Hispanic brothers. I'm harder on them. Because contrary to what you've been taught, see, I think minorities have had it easy. Black, yellow, brown, I don't give a fuck what color. So I make sure that I'm not easy. So I overcompensate by whipping all minorities like a motherfucking dog. And especially Hispanics. Because contrary, popular belief is how hard we've had it, isn't it? That's a load of shite. On that happy note, and I'm sure I'll get death threats, thank you very much.